What's going on, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time this week on the podcast is the one and only Nero. I've been a fan of Nero since forever. Their record Promises obviously blew up back in 2011 with their first album, Welcome to Reality. Second album, Between Two Worlds, 2015, and they have just released a new album called Into the Unknown 9 years after their second album. I really enjoyed this conversation. Got to speak to Dan and Joe from the band and discussed all things writing records, writing albums, major record deals, touring live, just generally how the dynamics of Nero work. Really enjoyed this episode. They're lovely guys. So without further ado, Nero. And we are live. Dan, Joe, aka Nero. What's cooking, lads? You well?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's back in the UK, which is nice. Yeah, I can't really complain. I haven't recorded a podcast for like a good couple of weeks, so I'm probably a bit rusty today. So I apologize. Where in the world are you? You're clearly not together.
No, Joe.
Yeah, I'm in a place just near Lisbon. I moved here a couple of years ago, and then I'm just taking a little trip away. Yeah, I was in LA for 10 years, and then decided to come a bit closer to home.
Did you get the whole like tax thing?
Oh, yeah, I did.
With
yeah,
Portugal. Yeah,
I mean, I'd like to say I moved here just for the pastel de natas and the seafood, but I guess there was an incentive as well.
Going from LA tax to Portuguese tax, I'm all for that.
Yeah. It's lovely here, and there's actually a really nice scene. There's a good little music scene. It's a kind of smaller city than LA and London as well, so. Yeah, now I'm kind of just hit like getting a little older. It's like a smaller city feels nice, a bit more chill.
I've actually never been to Lisbon. I've been to Portugal, but I've never been to Lisbon.
That's great.
I really want to go. Yeah. It's really interesting what they've done out there with the whole kind of artist scene and kind of how they've driven a lot of artists out there.
I think it was after Brexit. They basically were like, okay, there's some like, disgruntled Brits, and let's try and help. If they want to come over, then let's do it. And I guess I got to kind of just the other side of COVID, and then was looking for a change, and found out that there was this kind of art scene that had grown there since like 2009 or whatever it was. It's been really good so far.
So have you both of you always lived apart?
We know Joe didn't move to LA till after the first album, right? Oh no, after the second album even, actually.
Between Two Worlds.
I just moved there, then I came back when we were kind of recording it. But yeah, like I guess we were hanging out from the age of, when was it, like 16, and then in our 20s in London, and so we were kind of together then.
Always together. So we're going into. I kind of want to dig into some of the past, realistically. First record or first album, Welcome to Reality, 2011.
Yeah.
The times have changed since 2011. Things have moved on massively.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't put albums out very very often, so we take quite a long time to write them. So yeah, every time we come back, the landscape is just totally different, and we've got to try and try and get our heads around like, oh well, now you've got to be on TikTok all the time, which hasn't happened, but because we don't really do that, it's just not our things, but it is just always quite amazing how things change each time we come back. I guess when Between Two Worlds was coming out, it was really when streaming platforms were starting to take off. Or maybe even slightly before, like 2015.
Yeah, I think it was just before, because I'm trying to, when did, I'm Googling this, Spotify start? Because I think Spotify started 2006, but I don't think we really paid attention until, 2014.
Yeah, it wasn't until it got bought out, right? And then
yeah. And I think then you guys then released Between Two Worlds, which was 2015, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So like this is the thing, because I've grown up, like you guys, your music kind of was like part of my teenage years, I guess, to a certain extent. Like I remember becoming a DJ, and then the dubstep scene and drum and bass scene kind of kicking off again, and you guys being at the forefront, especially in the UK, kind of coming up around like the Skrillex days, Knife Party days, Chasing Status. It was kind of like a big crew, right? Not like all together, but like it was just like a big scene that was like popping off around that time.
Yeah, but it's definitely with Chasing Status, because we were on their label. We signed to MTA in 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And then it got taken over by Universal and Mercury, which then became Virgin. But
did they fuck it?
Well, like you got to be careful what you say. But we did leave Virgin. We kind of chose to leave because it wasn't that it was them so much. It's just that when it was Mercury, we had this whole team around us that we worked with so well. We and they got us. And then it wasn't long before the second album came out, and it was kind of late to suddenly have a total personnel change, and they got rid of almost all of the people that we worked with on the first album, and so it just felt like I don't think they get it quite the same way, and so that and it was just an unfortunate timing really for it to all change and for it to be all new kind of people coming in.
I think it's really interesting as artists though, is kind of all these things that we all go through, right? Is like we evolve as human beings, we evolve as artists. Our lives change as we get older. Our music changes, but also like everybody around us changes. And I think that's the tough thing as an artist, is like having to kind of really evolve with the rest of the industry and all the people around it, because like realistically you can't expect the whole team at Mercury to stay with Mercury for the rest of their life, if you know what I mean. And you can't expect a business like Mercury not to be taken over by a massive giant like Virgin. Like all these things like happen, and at the end of the day it's really strange, because I was talking to some friends about it earlier on in the week, and it's like this industry is changing, it's so different now. Like even from like last year, it's so different. And the weird thing, and without sounding dramatic or like kind of like dramatic and being the victim, but it's always the artist that kind of get screwed over at the end of it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that like we're not screwed over. That's probably the wrong word. It's like we're the ones that have to evolve with the change. It's not like the marketing person at this label or the pitching person at this label. It doesn't really affect them. If you know what I mean. We're the ones that our kind of life, we have to like evolve with the music industry.
And you got to kind of keep up with the crop of young producers that come through, because you have to sort of have an ear out for what they're doing and you know stay relevant. But it's what's really hard to keep up with for us is that how much like social media has become almost like a bigger arm than the music itself in a way. It's really hard to keep up with that. And I always found like, you know, we write a lot of different kind of genres under the sort of Nero umbrella that thankfully all just sound Nero to other people, but it's kind of like writing different stuff and changing, you know, the style of what we're writing has never been a problem. It's only the first time really with this one that it feels like, oh, you've got to have this whole other string to your bow, and that's just something we never courted, is like this kind of social media thing.
How do you tackle that though?
All these things are cyclical. I think it'll all come back round again. And how do you tackle it? Well, for us, it's mostly just our management saying like, right, we should do this post and this post and this post this week, and us going, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Basically,
good old Harvey.
Yeah, a lot of kind of like, oh, you know, call to action in a post, and it's like, we just not. I don't know, want to you know, it's just not us to do that, to be like, what do you guys think? It's like, no, you don't, you know, it's not that you don't care, but it's just that it's I think there's something really nice about having a bit of mystique between like a fan and a band that they like. And I think you know, I just can't imagine like David Bowie going on Twitter after a Ziggy Stardust gig, you know, and being like, hey, look what I'm having for dinner tonight. You know, it's kind of just, it's it would kill the mystique, right? And so I feel like it's nice to have some things, nice to have a bit of distance sometimes and not like break the fourth wall down or whatever, you know.
I guess, how does, obviously we all have stresses as artists, right? And we kind of all worry about things and kind of are our own worst enemies when it comes to getting in our own heads about everything. But stepping away, like making that decision to like kind of just step away from social media to a certain extent, does that kind of relieve the stress?
Yeah, I think I find it kind of, if you're not following maybe also what everyone else is doing as much, then you'll find yourself chasing the scene a little less, and maybe not worrying about quite so much about, you know, what's going on out there, and staying a little bit more true to what you do. It's kind of finding a balance, isn't it? Because at the same time, you can't be just totally disconnected.
Yeah.
So I think that's the hardest thing with all this stuff: mobile phones, social media, everything in general. Is just like, how do you not be connected all the time and just looking at everything, and so your brain becomes a big fog. But also, how do you kind of stay a little connected to it? And yeah, it's kind of hard to find that balance. I mean, for us, we kind of took a bit of time, maybe did some solo stuff, and we're starting to play around with ideas, and it just naturally took a little longer to put a whole new album together. In which time we'd been influenced by other sounds, and all the songs that came together are actually quite diverse in terms of their influences. And yeah, so it wasn't like there was a certain time when we were looking at what was going on and thought, let's kind of follow this thing.
Yeah, no, I really respect that. I think also coming from, when was the first record you guys put out? I haven't gone back that far.
Well, I mean, like the very first record we ever put out was in 2004, which was a drum and bass song, and we sampled Richard Strauss's "Thus Spake Zarathustra." And like had a bunch of samples from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay.
And you know, it's kind of like comedy now, but we recently just started putting up some of these old drum and bass songs, and people still liking them. And I have to admit, like, I hadn't heard some of them for like 15 years. You know, I don't tend to really listen back to stuff once it's out. You know.
Yeah.
But it was quite fun. A lot of memories came flooding back and stuff, and we found this big stack of CDs. So there was loads of unreleased stuff as well, which we were kind of like, I don't think this should ever probably come out, because if it didn't come out back then, you know, it probably wasn't. But it was really, really fun for me and Joe just to send it back and forth and just remember some of these old songs.
Yeah, the very first track we wrote was called AK-47.
Yeah.
Is that the very first idea we ever came up with?
It was the very first, yeah. These in about 2002, it must have been, or 2001 we did that one, yeah.
And because we found a sample of like gunfire and thought that had to be in a track.
That was original.
Yeah, exactly.
I think back then, because you used to be really into Civilization, Joe, and you just had all these like sounds from the game on there.
Was that the game?
So
yeah,
funny,
and I think that's what we were doing. We were just using these sounds from like Civilization because they were on your computer. So we was like, oh, just stick that in, that'll do.
Yeah.
Somehow got into the file directory of the game and managed to find all the actual like sounds, you know. Great.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Good
and then we
times.
tried. Yeah, exactly. That's when we weren't taking it at all seriously, and it was just having fun messing around.
Yeah.
But I think, like, let's be honest, like, when do you start taking it seriously? Is that when the first record does well?
I think maybe around 2007 we started taking it a bit more seriously, in that I think we found it quite funny just to write really stompy drum and bass bangers that were a little bit tongue in cheek for the first kind of 2 or 3 years, and then I'd say like one of our first really serious records was probably Solid Air. Joe, do you reckon? And like. And what was the track on the other side again? What's it called?
Choices.
Choices, yeah. And that felt that was us like, okay, we want to be serious now. And I think that was the point when it started. It was serious, and it was actually, we were out of university then, and we were like, well, let's do this as a job. Let's try and really make this work. And then
what year are we talking then?
So that was 2007 or 2007, 2008.
Yeah, because on your really Spotify, you have, sorry to butt in, on your Spotify, the first record on there is This Way, which came out 2008. Yes,
yeah, that was the first ever, or it was like the second 140 like dubstep thing we put out. So yeah, we're well into our serious phase by then, and then we I'd say from that point, from like 2008, it is just a build towards the album in 2011, basically.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And I'd say everything before that was us kind of having fun, and there is definitely that sort of that mark in the sand where it was like, oh, okay, this is a job now, and we want to actually do this for real,
Was there ever a point when like it for you guys it was like a record that kind of popped off where it was like, okay, we can actually do this full time, or was it just a case of like, okay, let's just keep going, we want to do this full time, like how are we going to make it? Or was it?
Yeah, it was definitely the Blinded by the Light Streets bootleg that we did, because I remember I had a job, like a kind of day job before that, and then that got picked up by Scream, and then Annie Mac was playing it on Radio 1. And
Mike Skinner wanted to make it official, right? Yeah.
Was that 2009?
I can't remember. When was that?
I think that sounds about right. 2009.
Yeah, I think it is. I've got it up here. 2009. Yeah.
And obviously we were on MySpace then. Checking the messages, and we would get bookings that way. Promoters would, reach out to us through there, and we'd figure it out.
We took bookings through MySpace for like the first 2 or 3 years.
Really?
I'd say until like 2010 probably, we were just taking bookings ourselves through MySpace.
That's so dope.
I know, yeah.
And after that record came out, those bookings started coming in a lot more, to the point where it was like, oh, okay, we can actually gig, every other weekend or something, and make this a real thing.
It was amazing how back then remixes like were actually relevant.
No one really gets remixes now. And like it's just, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but because sometimes if it's a dance record, you probably don't need another dance remix or whatever, or and there'll be indie bands out there who would just hate the idea of having a dance remix of one of their songs or whatever. But it's true, you don't see it so much now. There was that period, right, Joe, and it's probably like 2008 to 2010. We must have done 20, 30 remixes. I mean, I don't even remember all of them. That's the thing. There's so many that I've lost track of like how many we did. One of the big ones though was the Dead Mouse Ghosts and Stuff remix.
Yeah, I remember that.
But just so many.
I think the way that we wrote music at the start was very sample based. So we would find a sample of something and loop it in the way that kind of like a hip hop producer would. So remixing came very naturally to us, and we just loved doing it. Going from pre-existing audio and creating a track through that was actually kind of how we wrote music anyway. We were using synths back then a bit, but like it was actually a lot of kind of sampling. So we loved doing remixes. And that's kind of why we were just throwing them all together.
Yeah,
and we would always be like, we're so into like Daft Punk and that kind of that scene, the French Touch, and then Justice and Sebastian, and before that even like Garage, just the kind of sampling vocals from old soul records and just like pitching them up, and like that was sort of one of the apart from like drum and bass, which wasn't so much sampling, that was sort of really our main influence in electronic music. And there was, and that's another thing, is they're not so much of anymore. Like sampling isn't done so much,
It's done in a very different way. I don't like in my world, in the house world, sampling's done like in such a blatant way where it's like you almost have to have a big sample, or you have to bring a new record, or an old hit into the new to even have a successful record.
But before, it was about finding that record no one had ever heard. You find it on like some vinyl and digging through a bin. It's like, wow, I'll check this. I mean, like maybe not so far back in the day, but still I do this. I'll find a rare record and I'll go on Who Sampled and just make sure no one's ever sampled that before. I'll be like, that's fresh. No one, and it'll be just the most rare, obscure record, That's what sampling is, right? That's what it should be. And I always there's that great DJ Shadow, that documentary about a sort of DJ. I think it's called Scratch, is it? I can't remember. And there's all this footage of DJ Shadow in this a record shop in America, in New York somewhere, and underneath they've just got these miles of storage of just vinyl piled up high, and he just goes around with a little portable record player, like just picking a
wow.
Let's just do that, and just picks a random record out, and he's like, I found this sample, I found that sample by doing it, so for me, like sampling a big song that everyone knows, that's cheating. That's not right, But then I don't know. Who am I to say it's not right? But yeah, I don't know. Our whole like thing. I guess the old school mentality of sampling is finding that little gem, like crate digging, finding that little gem that no one's got.
Well, I think I totally agree. I think for me, the concept of sampling is recreating a record out of somebody else's record, not using somebody else's hit to make a weaker hit, which I think is happening all the time now. It's like, okay, you're going to use a record that Max Martin has had a number one for 10 weeks at, and then you go and remix it. It's a bootleg, which bootlegs are great, right? Bootlegs are amazing for DJs. Like, look what happened with you guys with Blinded by the Lights, right? Bootlegs they're tools. However, they're not original records.
No, exactly. They're remixes, right? It's more a remix than a turning something into your own, and as well, I kind of find the more you chop it up and sort of mangle it, the more interesting it becomes as well. And you look at One More Time. In fact, you look at a lot of those old Daft Punk things. I remember sort of 2008 when suddenly people started finding what they'd sampled. There was this big thing of just like, it's that track they sampled. Suddenly it kind of all came out, and but a lot of the time, there's still a few where it's like, I think that sample's from that, but I don't know, because they maybe chopped like 3 songs together here, or like one little mini, like micro sample, I remember what it used to be called, and Justice used to do it a lot, I think like something like Genesis has got little tiny slithers of samples from about 20 songs or something like that.
Do you follow Bauer on social media?
Well, I love Bauer, but I'm just not on social media. No, I don't. But
you should. He started doing these videos where he like breaks down records through the samples. It's really interesting. Like, obviously, like we know like how he does it through going through who sampled who. But it's genuinely really interesting to like watch him kind of recreate stuff, or like maybe make a new record out of it, and kind of just go in depth of like all of the records that we loved and grew up listening to, and hearing him like break it down. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I'll check that out, definitely.
But I think that's the thing, is there does come a point though, and you guys made the transition as Nero of like, okay, we now need to write songs.
I don't know if we ever had that thing of like, we need to write songs. I think we just came from, we loved rock music and indie and whatever, and it was just kind of natural. We never had like a sit down like discussion and kind of formulated some plan. It was just natural. It was just a natural thing. And we'd love to say, it was a way of differentiating us from whatever, but we didn't didn't have that as a plan. But in a way, it did kind of work out that way. I suppose we came into, drum and bass, and there's obviously a load of pre-existing and just incredible drum and bass, and there was dubstep had been around for a while. So through doing that, I suppose we found our own kind of niche. And obviously, by the time Welcome Reality came out, tracks like Promises are just so different from it's not. I mean, it's not even really dubstep. It's just at that tempo. But it was just like a song that we'd written and had way more of a kind of indie rock feel almost. And going back to the sampling thing, something that we loved was putting together two samples that really shouldn't go together, but somehow it worked. Like I was thinking of this early drum and bass track we did called Requiem, where it had this, I can't even remember the sample of the soul singer, but it's like a female diva soul singer singing on top of like a loop from Mozart's Requiem.
We chopped a couple of bits from the Requiem,
it just shouldn't work, and it's kind of, in a way, it was just having fun, but it was somehow the feel of the two tracks together. There was some kind of little magic in there, and so again, it was like when I look back to Welcome Reality, we always had fun marrying things that maybe kind of on the face of it you'd think they might not go together, but somehow they kind of work.
No, I like that a lot, and I think it's really interesting how you listen to your catalog throughout the last 10-15 years, and you've created a sound that Nero is Nero, and I know that kind of might sound a bit weird coming from you guys. Obviously know your sound, if you know what I mean, but I think it's like one of the hardest things people as artists struggle to do is find a sound that doesn't really sound like anybody but fits in with certain genres. And I think like listening back to Welcome to Reality, Between Two Worlds, and then also I was on the step machine at the gym this morning, and I listened through to Into the Unknown.
Cool.
And like for me the sonic, like from the first record of Into the Unknown, like I knew what was coming, and that for me is like the most perfect thing, and I think only some of the biggest artists in the world can do that. And I kind of more so talking about in the electronic world, like your Chemical Brothers, right? Like what you're gonna get with a Chemical Brothers record, like it, and in not saying that every record sounds the same, but there's such a signature sound. What is that process for you guys when is it just the sounds that you make? Is it just like how you work, or is it like a process of like, actually this isn't a Nero record, we can't put that out on the album, let's try and move it into a Nero record, or how does that work?
Well, it's interesting because I've definitely said before, I think we've had conversations that go along the lines of, I wish we knew what made a Nero record, because then it would be so much easier, right? But I kind of feel like I maybe think probably all artists might find this a little bit, but I think fans of you probably have a much better idea about what your sound is and what you are than you yourself, because you're so in it. Whereas from a fan's perspective, kind of standing outside looking in, they probably got a much better grasp of what it actually is. But obviously, I guess, like the process you go through, the way you produce this, I think a lot of people kind of over the year, if you've been producing for many years, and when we started producing, there weren't YouTube videos to show you how to kind of do stuff. You just had to learn it yourself and find get the plugins and stuff like that. And I think you get into these little kind of weird foibles and little kinks and bad habits, maybe of the way your effects chain is going to be, and it's not the done kind of traditionally done thing, but over the years you just kind of stick to that, and it becomes part of what drives the sound, what makes the sound recognizable. And as well, I think having Alana, it makes a big sort of difference, because she's got a very identifiable voice. She has quite a British kind of twang, and she doesn't sound
consistency as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, consistency. Yeah, Joe, so you can chip in there.
What was the question again?
No, I think that is like, I don't know, you guys tell me, but for me as an artist, it's like it's my dream is like when somebody tries to explain what your sound is and people just, well, it's just Will Clarke, right? It's just a Will Clarke sound. It's just a Nero sound. Like there isn't any like, and there's people that try to sound like you and it never sounds like you, if you know what I mean. There's always that. And I think that's the thing is like you guys came up and around and kind of got so big to a level where people were trying to write records like you guys and kind of you guys started.
But I don't know that. I've never heard a song and gone, oh, that's them like trying to be like us.
I've heard it so many times.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't listen to enough like electronic music or like what's happening in the scene. But I'd always been under the, because I remember for example, like, you know, like Sonny, when he came on the scene, you know, that kind of Skrillex sound, suddenly everybody was trying to copy that sound. And for whatever reason, that was a very easily identifiable as when someone copied it. It was like, that's a rip-off.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it was very easy to identify the people that were just trying to rip off Sonny's sound. And so, again, maybe it's this thing because you're in it, you don't, it's kind of just different to you. But my thing was always like, well, I don't feel like we ever got ripped off, and I don't know if that's a compliment or if that's a diss. You know? Yeah.
No, I love it. So, like, going from writing an album in 2015 to releasing an album August the 16th, 2024, how does that, like, you're talking 9 years. Like, what even is that, like, in a sense of a three people writing records together? Like, how is that process now? We've all got older, our lives have changed. Joe's moved 2 countries. Like, how does that kind of process work?
Well, I mean,
I think we really started it during the pandemic, right? So we were I was in LA then, Dan was in London, and we started having the conversation about we'd both kind of separately been just starting to play around with some little ideas, just getting some samples or some loops together. And yeah, that was the first moment that we kind of figured, oh, let's actually try and kind of get this together now. And so, yeah, obviously that was just a process of, you know, Zoom calls and sharing sessions and folders and so on, which, you know, previously would have been totally impossible or just sapped the energy so much. But especially recently, we've been kind of working together live remotely, and it's just like it's obviously not quite as good as being in the studio together, but and we of course have done that quite a lot. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started out.
You've disappeared, Joe.
You've got
you are. You're back.
Bye.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, that's. I think that's the thing. What the kind of Zoom sessions has enabled us to do is just have those interim kind of sessions to do the little bits and bobs, and the way it kind of works now is that we can just make sure everything's lined up, and then we'll do like a week together or something.
Okay,
and that means we're going into it knowing like, right, here's this list of what we've got to do. We got the little bits and bobs done, you know, on Zoom, but now we can do the stuff where it's really nice to be in a room together, to be listening on the same speakers, to have that instant feedback, and I think you tend to be more creative and easygoing when you're in a room together. It can be a bit more. Maybe just see where things take you a little bit more. That would have been definitely earlier on in the album kind of process, though, because I guess Joe was just in London. We were just when we were finishing it, and so that was, we knew what we were doing. We knew we were finishing songs, but we'd had a few. I went over to LA before Joe left LA, and and Joe's been to London a few times. So it's making sure, you know, we use the time really wisely when we are together, and that we know what we're going to do before we go in. So we just maximize it.
So on the record, there's like 13 records in total.
Yeah.
How many records do you make before you get that full 13?
Hundreds.
I always love this conversation because I'm literally like actually I think on the day your album gets released, I'm announcing my debut album.
Oh, wow.
Which is quite
Congrats,
interesting. Man. So I'd like to I love asking people like, how many records did it take to get 13?
Oh dear. Well, I mean, you've got to factor in how many versions of each record as well, right? How many versions of each track. And what we tend to do is like change the track. The vocal quite often can be the only thing that's left, where we're like, right, we like the vocal, but get rid of the track and let's try something else. Sometimes you end up coming back to something very close to how it originally was, but it's almost like you have to put yourself through that utter hell,
the pain,
just to make sure that was the right one. Or suddenly like something quite late can just suddenly bloom, and it's like, that's it. We got it just in time, you know. So I feel like it's a process you have to go through to make sure it is, you know, it's the best it can be, and to stop you having like regrets maybe after it comes out, you know, like maybe we could have done something a bit better under that vocal or whatever, you know. It's like, you got to go through the pain.
Is there like a sounding period of like when, okay, the 13 records are done, maybe not mixed and mastered, but they're done, and there's literally just like a listening period? Like, is there, do you play it to other people? Like, what is that kind of like that?
Yeah, we were constantly playing it to other people as we went along. And it was only about, I'd say 2 or 3 weeks ago, Dan, that we had the final 13. And we were like, okay, this is it. And to be honest, we kind of...
That's quite soon, considering.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the final process is actually... I quite like it because it can be quite kind of quick and you know exactly what you're doing. So once we had it kind of all lined up and we knew the songs, it was just, let's find a good track order. And then I flew over to London, and it was a matter of in 3 days kind of getting it all together. Because we mix stuff ourselves. So the final bounces are kind of basically from us.
That's great.
And yeah, it's actually kind of fun because it can take forever to get to that point, but as soon as you're there, it's a rapid
quick,
final
in and out
kind of process.
Yeah. And I think we work best when the pressure's suddenly really on, and last minute we always somehow just about put it out the bag. I remember with the first album, we were like, Promises was the last song we wrote.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's
it was
so good.
So late. It was so late in the process. I mean, we wrote it and we're like, actually, this has got to be the next single, and it came out soon after. And so I remember we were there was a month when we were finishing Promises, like writing Promises, finishing the album, doing the BBC Philharmonic thing that we did. Yeah. And that was a 20-minute like score, 20-minute like piece of orchestral music whilst we're doing all the other things. Doing the live show, so that was our first time putting a live show together in Ableton. So we're trying to learn how to use Ableton and do that and work that all out. And we got it all done. And I think it's because suddenly all this pressure was on. It's when we were at best. Otherwise, I think we tend to just be like, we'll do that like, in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Like it will sort itself out. And then the last couple of weeks is intense, but we sort of work best under those conditions, I think.
I love that. Going into this album, it's on 2808 Recordings. Is that your label?
Yeah. Well, it's like a subsidiary of Create Music Group.
Create. Yeah. So I want to go into a bit of, like, I don't need to know the detail of the deal, but obviously Curate is a distribution company mostly.
Yeah.
Right, out of America.
Yeah.
So it's not really a quintessential record label.
No.
What was the choice of like going from major to not major and kind of doing it yourselves? I know the deals the Curate do. Yeah. Like I know how it works, but it's not a major record label deal.
No, exactly. And there was a lot of discussion about that. I remember sort of being like, oh, you know, look, you know, a lot of people are saying majors are dead. You don't need majors anymore. The only people that need major record labels now are like pop singers who need all that kind of PR behind them and that kind of like that vehicle.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, well, yes, but they also do have, you know, great contacts. They can throw money at things, and we'd only ever done albums with major labels, so it felt like it was quite sort of stepping off into the deep end for us.
Yeah.
Having said that, I remember when we were with majors, we would always find it quite annoying, the barriers that would be put up. Maybe if it was stuff like making a music video, everything had to go through the what would it be called? Like the person who kind of like gets the video, who's working in the video department at the label, and then there's someone else under them, and then there's the producer for the director, and then there's the director. And every music video we've ever done, the first thing we've actually did, even behind like going around the people at Virgin or whatever, was like make a direct connection to the director, because we like wanted to work with the director, and we've always been very hands-on with the music videos in terms of coming up with the concept with whoever's directing it, and so it would be like, look, let's not let the label know, but like we'll just talk to it, just let them think that we're going through them, but we'll just obviously talk to each other. And every director was like, thank you.
You know, we prefer this.
Yes, exactly. Like this is how it should always be. So I think there's just such positives and maybe negatives these days with major labels. I know that with Create we got a pretty good deal. It's in terms of like, it's when you get your masters back and stuff. Like we're still waiting to get the masters back for Welcome Reality. Every time we like do a post, and other people tell me this as well, there'll be like 10 people saying, when are you putting Welcome Reality out on vinyl? When are you going to do a repress? Because
you can't.
Because you know, it was like, I don't know how many we press, but they're really collectible now. I think they go for like £400, £500 or something. Yeah. And so people want them, but we're, you know, we either got the choice of like, we replay it all. I'm not too, I don't know about that, you know, or we got to just wait another, I think it's like
10 years.
I don't think it's that long. No, it's within a decade now. It was 5 to 10. I think it might be like 6 or 7, something like that. And then we'll get them back, and then we will definitely, just to get the word out, we will definitely be doing a repress at some point, you know.
It's just amazing to me that I understand why the majors don't, because it's like realistically, do they care? It was 2011, right? In the grand scheme of, in their world, it's nothing, but in your world, it's everything, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the biggest thing, and I think that's what we were kind of talking about earlier. Is like we still have to abide by these kind of things that the industry put in, and I totally agree with you on the major label side of things. I think there's massive pros and massive cons, but I'm really interested to see you guys kind of do a distro deal and have the ability to do that, though, because I think there's some artists that like you come out and you like, oh, a major label, I need a major label deal, right? Even with me, like I kind of signed an indie deal, but it's still a major deal at the end of the day.
Right, yeah,
it's still, but I think you think like it's having the confidence in yourself to go, actually, you know what, we can do this ourselves. And I think that is very much 2024 now, is like we have the ability to do that nowadays. Yeah. Which is definitely different to what it was in 2011.
And it felt like we've been gone for so long that also this album is probably like got to be seen as us trying to come back, really, and it's sort of trying to build an audience base and try and get our stuff heard by like a younger audience, you know.
Yeah.
So it feels like, you know, if this one does well, we're not saying we wouldn't go on a major further down the line. It's kind of a bit of an experiment in terms of like, well, we've got to come back with something. Let's come back with an album, and let's do it this way and see what happens and see how it works, and then that might inform what we do in the future, basically.
Albums are really interesting though, because I think, especially in the electronic world, not so much pop world or kind of rock or anything like that, or even rap, like, but in the electronic world, albums have kind of got to the point where they don't really matter so much in the sense of how they are streamed, how they're listened to, people, consumers, right? I personally love albums. Like, it's for me, especially electronic albums.
I find a lot of dance albums though tend to be like a sort of succession of just dance floor songs, and I think that doesn't help the electronic album thing. Like Joe, what we've always done is try to create a journey with the album, right? And so segues,
sure,
think
like,
about.
I've heard quite a lot of people saying recently that they feel like the album and that experience is coming back, or they've been really enjoying actually just listening through to an album rather than the playlist, which will just throw them around in different directions. And certainly when I go to an artist profile now, the first thing you do is kind of press the top thing on Spotify, and then you're obviously getting kind of a random selection of their music. But it's just best to go to an album, and then you get that kind of
the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I've definitely had a few kind of conversations with people where they're like, "Oh no, we're really making like an effort to try and like listen to artist albums." So I wonder if it's going to like kind of come back round to that a little bit.
I really hope it does, because I've sound like a broken record on this podcast, but I've said it so many times. Like, even just growing up in the like vinyl world or even the CD world, like just getting in your car, putting a tape on or putting a CD of like someone's album, and kind of that staying in your car for the next 2 months, and that's the only thing you listen to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think like for me, that's so important to create real fans as an artist. It's not just based on one record, and that one record, like, obviously I think there's always one record that kind of jumps out over everything, right? Like, and we can't control what that is, but I think what we can control is the playlist of the album and how the album flows. And I think that's really important for fans to understand how our brains work in that sense.
Definitely. I feel like as well with this album, we kind of like, not being, this is one thing about maybe not being on a major, having less of a sort of an A&R figure, someone who's like, that's the single. And so I feel like we weren't really sure what the single should be, and we've just kind of picked some, you know. But I bet there will be a lot of people out there that would be like, they totally chose the wrong singles for this album. Like, this stuff that's on the albums, like, you know, that should have been the single. But that's kind of great, right? And I hope that people will listen to the album front to back as an album. And I think there will be a lot of people that will sort of be like, oh, this works. This is like meant to be listened to as an album. And that's why it's hard to choose singles sometimes, because we're thinking about it as this one kind of body of work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So like, at this moment in time, you've done 4 singles.
Yeah.
Too Many Questions being the latest, but we're currently on 10th of July. How many more singles are you doing, or are you not?
So yeah, there's one more single called Solar, which is going to come out around the time of the album. And
got a really cool music video, like a great music video for it coming as well. Which essentially,
I love that you're. Sorry to buy, but I love that you're doing music videos. Like,
so, I'm the one that really pushes. Like, I know Joe loves it as well, but I like really. No one does it these days, and we spent quite a lot of money on this music video, and you know, there is this thing where it's just like, is anyone going to see it? And it does sadden me actually, because music videos have been a big part of Nero. We've always really cared about the visual side, and
well, it's always been a massive, like, from me as somebody that's been a fan, but not like fully immersed into the drum and bass dubstep world. Like, but I've always known visually, Nero is very visual based. Even just going on Spotify, if you know what I mean. I know the Nero logo from like,
right, yeah,
because it's always been so visual. I know the vibe, if you know what I mean. I think that's really, really important.
It was. I think that was a big thing for us and who we are as Nero is like how the audio visual went together. But it's really hard to really push, like, let's spend loads of money on a video like it would have been before, you know, like second album, first album, because people just like are kind of happy just with the 15-second clip on the streaming platform or whatever. But having said that, like, we made it kind of work with this, because this video was finished quite a long time ago, and what we've been doing is just cutting clips out of it. So from 2 videos that we've done, we did one for Truth at the start of the campaign and one for this at the end of the campaign. But from those 2 videos, we got the artwork, we got all the assets, we got the little clips that will be on, you know, Spotify when you stream it, whatever. There are other streaming platforms available, I would like to say, because I'm not too into Spotify's politically. But yeah, you know, so I think that's kind of like the way it will go is, you know, you do like a couple of videos for a campaign and just be clever with how you use them and get all your visual content from those 2 videos or whatever, you know.
I think it's clever. I think it's the way that it allows us to still be artists and still kind of show our art through visual, because I think there's always a massive visual. I don't know about you guys, but when I write records, there's a huge visual part to it that, you know, you're kind of imagining what the music video is going to be like just by writing the record. And when you're listening to it, like once it's mixed and mastered, you're like, okay, I know where this needs to go. But I just think it's a business at the end of the day, and it costs so much money to do music videos. And I think labels are like, well, why do you need to spend 15, 20, 30 grand on a music video that is going to generate 0 money? But you're right, you can create so much content from it.
I mean, genuinely, like, I think we spent like 150 grand or something on these 2 videos, and so I thought it's good to say that, because I want people to know, like, that, you know, we are, you know, we are pretty dedicated to it, and maybe hopefully people will check it out, you know. But you know, the label and everyone's just going like, you mad? That's 150 grand we could spend on getting some TikTok influencer to like put one of your songs in there. It's like, no, that's not. I want to see the money on the thing. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's a different world. I think it's a different world.
It's completely different, but I think realistically, like on your YouTube, like you got 383,000 subscribers. Like, you have a base of people that want your music and want to be able to see your music visually. Like, we don't have MTV anymore. We don't have those kind of platforms, but YouTube is a hell of a tool, and it's the most viewed thing on the world. So like, realistically, I think music videos are so key for just visually growing an artist's career of like being a true artist.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I think
sorry,
so.
can I just cut in? Sorry. I'm having a bit of a minor technical meltdown here. I'm going to cut out. I'm worried it's just going to cut out in like a couple of minutes.
No worries,
would
man.
it be better if what's the best way of doing this? Like signing off, or
if you want to dip, me and Dan can carry on we're just going to probably do another 10 minutes and then we can crack on. So that's absolutely fine. If you want to dip, absolutely fine, mate.
Bunch word. I'm just going to go halfway through a sentence. So yeah, maybe I'll just let you guys do it. And yeah.
All right, that's cool, man.
Okay, cool. All right, well, thanks so much. Man.
Big love.
Right,
Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Bye.
Big love.
Cool,
Keep
cool.
safe. So I want to go into a little bit of live show.
Sorry,
we've gone sideways now, Joe.
He's got.
Let
I
me
think
see
he's
if I
got
can.
it. Just froze on that. Yeah. Sorry. Live show. Yeah.
Live show. I guess I've never seen you guys live as a live band. But I know it's a big part of your kind of career.
It is. Yeah.
Can you talk me through it?
Yeah. Well, the first live show for when we were touring Welcome Reality, we took it on the road for about 2 years. We had this massive piece of stage set built, and it's this booth that was made out of fiberglass. It looks like stacks of televisions, and we actually had like LED TV panels in behind.
That's cool.
So it looks like a stack of televisions and speakers, and just kind of like a futuristic junkyard kind of equipment that we're standing on. And we had 2 of those made. So we had one made for the States, one made for the UK. And
how much did that cost?
A lot of money. I think it was about 70 grand a pop to get them made. And we were in the red on the first tour. Eventually it does pay for itself and some back. And then the second thing, we kind of just used video wall and recreated the booth shape and then had content made. So it looked like the video wall kind of was the booth. But I didn't like that so much because I'm quite anti-video wall now. And I think even back then it was like everyone was using it. It felt very just done. It didn't feel like there was enough depth on stage. It's just a flat thing. Even if you got great 3D visuals, it's still just is going to look a bit flat. Whereas with the real booth, you know, the way the light hits it affects it, you know, you get glares and shadows, and something you're never going to get from video wall. But you know, it was good. The content was good. We headlined the second stage of Coachella with that show.
Wow.
It was that was amazing. That was an incredible show. But we are coming. It's a bit of this whole, it's interesting about live shows. It's a slight bone of contention at the moment, in that we are touring live at the end of this year, but we've decided to go into like smaller venues and just sell them out. You know, kind of 1,000 to 2,500 cap venues.
Yeah.
This is a US tour, by the way. At the moment, we're sort of still planning UK stuff and Europe, but it's become so expensive. I didn't really realize this until we started getting quotes, but it's become so expensive to tour the States now.
It's crazy.
I mean, like trucking is just is going to up it. Like, I mean, essentially, it's coming in at like, you know, we'd lose a lot of money even just doing a fairly basic show.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. So, well, what do you do? My whole thing has always been about the working to the music. I'm sort of like extroverted introvert or whatever.
Yeah.
Because
totally.
I love just getting up on stage and being part of a big show that you can almost sort of be a character in. It's almost sort of theatrical in a way, and that's all we try to always make our shows quite theatrical. And so for me, the idea of like, well, we're not going to turn up on this tour maybe with something that's going to blow people's minds. I think, but you know, it's almost like a hand is forced because post-COVID, it's just become like so difficult to tour something unless you're doing arenas. So what we're going to do is going to have to try and find ways that we can create something really cool that's going to look really cool and unique to us, but using off-the-shelf parts that we can rent in each territory. And it's a challenge. But I designed our last two live shows, so if I'm feeling like quite a lot of weight on me at the moment to basically like rise to that. And we did have a really cool design, and we've just been told like that trussing, I don't think we're going to get that in every territory. And we'd really gone down the path of this design, and it was like, that you know, we'd have to truck some of this stuff,
which just costs a fortune.
And it's still something we're trying to work out, you know. Again, it's like I was saying earlier, I know we'll get there in the end, and at the last minute
it'll click.
Fingers crossed, it'll click. And, but it's this sort of like how much things have changed since we were last around. When we had 8, like that. The first live show, particularly, we had 8 or 9 crew, and we had a tour bus. And it's the things like so bespoke. It's like someone who knows how to do it has got to set it up. You know, you could have some help from the in-house like venue crew, but I mean, it was really technical, really hard to set up. So right now, all we know is that Alana's not on this tour because Alana and I have just had a baby, a third kid. Thank you very much.
Congrats.
But I'm kind of like thinking it would be quite nice to do because she will be back next year. But for this show, so this show is sort of like this interim thing where me and Joe are actually going to have fun, I think, doing things with Alana's vocals we couldn't do if she was there, mashing them up, switching. But, you know, I'm quite looking forward to that. I think that's going to be really fun. But, we know that we're going to be it's going to be, you know, Ableton based. We're not DJing. We're going to do, it's working out a little setup, keyboards, stuff to trigger, you know, sort of sample triggering, stuff like that. Also, we're looking at having a certain element of control over the lighting and the video. We're not actually taking video, so we're going to be using what's there, right, in the venues. I think only 80% have them. So there'll be like some shows where it's not there, some shows where there will be video, and in those situations, we're going to do the video ourselves.
That's cool.
Because I've always thought, you know, we've had some amazing VJs and lighting operators, but it is always this thing as well. It's sort of like no one knows the music as well as you do. You can almost just can play the music, you know, visually. So that's going to be fun. So we know what we're going to do on a tech side behind the scenes. We're just trying to work out how to take a cool live show on the road and not go broke doing it, basically.
Dude, I'm literally doing the same thing at this moment in
time. Yeah.
Like the first live show I've ever done, and we're like, we've only got a few dates, like 6 dates. We planned like, okay, let's just start with 6 dates in America.
Yeah.
And like all in rooms that we know we can sell out, or we could, like, fingers crossed. I say that now, but like touch wood, you never know.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's so hard.
But like, I think I've never done it before, and it's so interesting. But I'm good mates with Dot from London Grammar.
Cool.
I don't know if you've done sessions with him or anything.
No,
like
I haven't actually. No, but I love that stuff.
Getting with him, he's great.
Wicked.
But he was so he's getting into DJing now and releasing stuff under his name.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know why all you fucking DJs want to become live acts, because he was like, it's an absolute ball ache.
Yeah.
He was like, because obviously they tour with a band,
right.
They have God knows how many crew.
Yeah.
But like, it's so true, because we're so fortunate as DJs to just like rock up with our USB sticks.
That literally,
and maybe a tour manager, or maybe like a light jock, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you earn more money than what you're going to earn if you're doing a live show. Yeah. Because because it's not a hard ticket venue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think there's also there's this thing about being a live act that sets you apart from everybody else.
Yeah, 100%. It's way more fun.
And it goes back to you guys doing albums.
There's more chance you could fuck it up. And that's great, right? DJing just too easy. It's great. I love it. I love it's nice to be able to do that. Rock up with a USB and you know, and I always try to push our sets. We always try to we're from that old drum and bass school where it's like, you know, let's try and do a triple drop, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I love that, but I am really I'm really excited about going back to taking it back to live, and that sort of like slight element of fear of fuck, if we're not like totally prepared for this, you know, something could go wrong mid-show. We're on a laptop or whatever. There's more.
Literally,
pioneers are made. They're just like built like, you know.
Brick shit houses.
Exactly. They you know, those things are not going to go wrong. But suddenly we're using this very delicate system that so many things could go wrong along the line. But that's kind of what playing live's about. You know, that's the
right?
point. Yeah, I think it's not fun unless you're slightly scared. Oh my god, this could all go tits up. You know.
I agree. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, just like a random like person at a party, and they were like, "Are you nervous?" And I was like, "No, I like the nerves of DJing had went a very long time ago. Very long time ago.
Definitely.
But like, we're in this process of like building a live show now, and like every phone call I get off, I shit my pants. Like every phone call. And I think for me is like, I don't know about for you, but like for me, there's something about that of like, it's so we don't choose normal jobs for a reason in this world. Yeah. Like we're very fortunate, and I don't want to sound too privileged in that sense, but like we're not choosing a 9 to 5 to have an easy life.
No, exactly.
We're choosing our career because it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I think there comes a point when you can kind of I can become jaded with the whole DJ thing. It's like, oh, I'm playing here, there, and it's like, yes, you push yourself, but like for me, like 90% of my sets are my music now. Yeah. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. I'm not even DJing. I'm not spending the like hours crate digging that I used to when I was a kid, like DJing. Yeah. Like you're not pushing yourself.
No.
So
yeah, definitely.
So like, how can you push yourself? Like, yeah, we're doing it in the studio every day, but especially in the situation where you guys are at, it's like you now have an album coming out. Like, how do you present that to the world to make it feel like Nero are back, but also Nero are doing some serious shit, not just trying to earn money DJing shows?
That's it, exactly. It doesn't help that I watched the Justice live show recently, and it's
good.
Just depressingly good, you know. And it's just like it's just like, right, well that's the bar, okay. And we were always I think like that with the first live show. it very much was like, that's the bar, we're going to hit that bar, and we did.
Yeah.
And this time it's like, well, we can't hit it on this run. That's just like unrealistic. And part of me just thinks they must be broke. Like, those guys must spend so much money on that, and it's you know, it's like, that's amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's just essentially, I think it helps that it's where you land. I think if our album had come out sort of later in the year, when we'd have just done some DJing support before it, then we'd be looking to get the Coachellas or the festival slots next year, where you get that kind of guaranteed bigger fees, and you can say, right, now we've got this to spend to put towards something, and we'll put that money into it and treat that as an investment. We won't take any money from that Coachella show or whatever. We'll just use that money to build the live show and come up with it. It's going to be filmed, so it's great exposure. Yeah. And then when we tour it after that, that's where we'll make the money, hopefully. So you know, this time it's definitely like, you know, we're trying to do something that is going to be that's going to be really cool. But yeah, it's so funny, man, because I don't know what it is yet myself, right? And it's kind of weird doing it. Normally we'd have never done this, gone on an interview, sort of saying, right, this is what's sort of like happening and how we're going to sort of do this. But I think it's important. No, it's great, and I think it's, you know, because things are so different now. I think it's nice to talk about these things and it's a struggle to do some of these things, and I hope it's gonna come back round. And I know that everything does seem like it's still reeling and recovering from the pandemic. It's just, it's, you know, just you know, sort of worldwide stuff at the moment has made everything very difficult. You know, a lot of problems in the world, and yeah, it's kind of like, I think what you got to remember at the end of the day is, we were talking about the music. Like, we've got 3 albums worth of stuff now, and some of the old remixes we might put in there, and that's going to be so fun. And we've literally just been digging out like the old computer to start bouncing all the stems from our first 2 albums. We've got the stems from the first album, actually, from the first live show we did. But when we came to do the second live show, we actually did it. It was like a mix between DJing and live. So half the set was DJing, and then we'd come out front when Alana came out, and then there were keyboards and stuff where we would play live. Cool. But it wasn't so much like we had to have all the stems broken down for that show, just for the live bits when Alana came out. So we're bouncing all the stems from Between Two Worlds as well. And that's going to be, in a way, you know, like, we'll make sure the show looks cool, but the music is really important. I think people just want to go out and hear the songs that they know us for, and then hear how the new album works. Because we had a vision in our head of how these albums go together, and we had a lot of thought when we're writing this album of how does this work with the previous 2. And so it's going to be so fun to go out, and I'm looking forward to that music side of things. And so it's kind of like, almost maybe on this first tour, the visuals are less important, because we're going to be doing something a bit different with not having Alana there, with doing a lot of like mashing up of her vocals over different songs, with playing around with how these 3 albums work together.
Well, I think also you have a lot of visuals from previous. We do, yeah. You have all your music videos. You have this current new music video both the music videos. Yeah, like, you have a lot of content.
We do. But as well, I have to say, like, it wasn't just out of a necessity of our video walls too hard to tour with. I went into this thinking, I'm kind of like bored of video wall, you know, like, let's do something where it's just lighting, like go old school, you know, just a cool arrangement of trussing, and have us work out a way that we can be on stage in a slightly different way. You know, and I think there's something quite freeing about that. So I'm kind of hesitant to really use too much video wall content. And if we do, the venues where we do have video wall, maybe just use it as to fire block colours through, really, rather than actual content. Yeah. I feel like on this one, it would be nice to take it somewhere different and go just like an old school light show, man, you know?
That'd be cool. Yeah. That'd be cool.
I love strobes. I just love, like, just intense, just strobing, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
just intensity.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Man, well, I can't wait to, like, I generally, like, please, let's keep in touch. Yeah, and I'd love to come and see it. I really would love to come and see it.
100%, man. Well, as soon as we're soon as we've got the London shows booked, we'll get you down there,
Please
man.
let me know.
Yeah, definitely.
Or even in the States. I'm in the States a lot.
Sweet,
so
man. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so let
100%.
me know. By the time I think this episode comes out, Into the Unknown is out. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Genuinely, I listened to it this morning and I really did like it. I'm not just saying that because you're
that's great.
You're on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm pleased with it. I think we've I think it works well with the other two albums as a sort of a trilogy body of work.
Yeah. No, I love it, man, and congrats. It's to come back 9 years after the last album and a long time before the first album is definitely a thing, and for it to still be successful. So I'm really happy for you guys.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Keep it up, man, and I'll catch you very soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, man.
Big love, man. See you in a bit. And that's a wrap. Big love to the boys for coming on. Hope you enjoyed it. If you are still listening now, please subscribe. Please give us some feedback. Give us some questions. Send me DMs. Go follow our podcast TikTok, which is the Will Clarke Podcast, and the podcast Instagram, which is the Will Clarke Podcast. Big love. See you soon. Peace.